The kingdom gasped. But within Kensington Palace, trust crumbled. What unfolded next became a royal crisis and an unspoken battle over remembrance, heritage, and dignity. When a crown stirred the ghosts of the past, it began with a single image. A standard military honor ceremony at Clarence House was meant to be another flawless royal engagement. Journalists assembled early, royal enthusiasts gathered at the entrance, and predictably, King Charles and Queen Camilla made their grand entrance with practiced elegance. But the instant Camilla emerged from the limousine, every lens captured something unprecedented. Crowning her head wasn't merely another royal jewel. It was Diana's wedding tiara. The Spencer tiara, legendary for its distinctive fan design and profound personal meaning, hadn't graced public view since Diana wore it years before. For decades, it remained protected in silence, perhaps destined for Princess Charlotte, or held in trust for Catherine as the rightful guardian of Diana's spiritual inheritance. That belief died in a heartbeat. Royal experts identified it immediately. "That's the Spencer," one broadcaster posted. A palace historian verified it within moments, and instantly, the digital world exploded. News alerts flooded screens before guests had even taken their seats. Yet, while society debated, one crucial figure remained oblivious. Princess Catherine had chosen to skip the ceremony. She'd committed to her children's charity auction instead, the kind of personal priority she never compromised. As the photograph spread online, she remained at Kensington Palace, surrounded by family and gathering charity pledges, completely unaware that royal history was being rewritten without her knowledge just miles away. William noticed first. His mobile vibrated continuously throughout dinner, and when he finally checked the alerts, witnesses say his face transformed completely. According to palace insiders, he discreetly left the room and immediately rang Catherine. By her answering, the image had gone viral. She required no briefing. She barely uttered a word. Those present later recalled her turning ashen, motionless, and profoundly wounded. Not enraged, not envious, but genuinely heartbroken. This transcended jewelry. This exceeded hierarchy. This concerned Diana. For Catherine, that tiara embodied something untouchable. It represented the crown Diana wore entering royal life, brimming with dreams and innocence, before betrayal and sorrow. Catherine had never claimed it for herself, but that wasn't relevant. She safeguarded it spiritually and symbolically as something still too raw to disturb. It belonged to a ghost, a grandmother who'd never held her grandchildren. And now, that ghost had been displayed on palace stairs like any ordinary treasure. The violation wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, making it more painful. A decision had occurred. Tearing open carefully bandaged wounds a monarchy had buried under ceremony. And instantly, the boundary between state function and personal mourning dissolved before global witnesses. What would transpire between Catherine, Camilla, and the institution would challenge everything Buckingham Palace had weathered in generations. More than a crown, Diana's sacred inheritance. To grasp the magnitude of what was violated, you must comprehend the tiara's significance. The Spencer tiara represented more than an ornament. It was a birthright of remembrance, a diadem of feeling that bore the burden of a woman cherished, mourned, and eternally grieved. Centuries before Diana became Princess of Wales, the tiara had graced her ancestry, the Spencers, transmitted through bloodlines as an emblem of aristocratic heritage and steadfast courage. When she married Prince Charles in 1981, Diana selected her family's crown over the royal collection. The decision revealed everything. It wasn't a lone emblem of obligation, but an intimate one, anchored in her lineage, her self-identity. And when she entered St. Paul's Cathedral, innocent, luminous, and blind to her future, that tiara sparkled not merely with gems, but with faith. Following Diana's devastating loss, her possessions transformed beyond objects. They became artifacts of an existence severed and a heritage that couldn't be deleted. The Spencer tiara retreated to her ancestral home, maintained deliberately from public view. Through the years, theories circulated about its next wearer. Many assumed it would grace Princess Charlotte at her debut. Others imagined Catherine, Diana's emotional heir, would wear it during a historic moment, but nobody foresaw Camilla wearing it. Camilla, the figure so frequently cast as the third element in the affair that shattered Diana's soul, the woman Diana memorably declared made her union suffocating. Though society had forgiven, media had rehabilitated, and titles had been granted, the psychological wounds persisted. For countless people, Diana's tiara on Camilla's brow wasn't simply shocking but sacrilegious. For Catherine, the anguish wasn't jealousy-driven. She commanded access to every tiara imaginable. She'd worn the Cartier scroll, the lotus blossom, the lover's loop, each with elegance and composure. But she'd never requested Diana's wedding crown. That wasn't hers to take. It remained hallowed, resting in reverence for Charlotte, maybe for tomorrow when it could emerge with restoration, not dispute. This instance felt treacherous to Catherine because the tiara had appeared without notice. There had been no discussion, no advance word, no thoughtful consideration. It was merely seized from heritage and inserted into circulation like a stage prop. The responsibility for that choice didn't rest with Camilla exclusively. It rested with the entire establishment that permitted it. For a woman who constructed her public existence on integrity, deference, and discipline, Catherine now faced something infinitely more meaningful than a jewelry controversy. It was a violation of remembrance, a rupture of unspoken accord, and a query began emerging, softly but forcefully, in British homes nationwide. Who determines Diana's legacy's appearance? The tiara wasn't simply glittering. It was haunting, and its placement on Camilla's crown had transformed memorial into conflict. An unexpected crown on Camilla's brow. Nobody anticipated the tiara's return that evening. The occasion was broadcast, ceremonial, and orchestrated with royal accuracy. As attendees gathered and cameras swept the entrance to Clarence House, everything proceeded with typical palace cadence until Queen Camilla stepped from the state vehicle. The sparkle was unmistakable. Before her complete profile appeared, royal observers identified the unique outline of the Spencer tiara, its fan-shaped curve and dazzling facets recognized globally. It wasn't merely another crown. It was Diana's crown. The revelation spread instantly. Digital platforms detonated. X blazed with Spencer tiara in seconds. Palace journalists, who documented Diana's journey, began reporting frantically. Many assumed an error. Others questioned if a duplicate existed. But detailed photographs verified reality. It was authentic. Within the reception hall, murmurs rippled through attendees. Ambassadors and nobles, masters of subtlety, shared meaningful looks. Personnel who'd served Diana years earlier allegedly stopped cold. One retired attendant, questioned afterward, described the vision as freezing the atmosphere, not from controversy, but because something consecrated had been violated. At Kensington Palace, the Cambridge staff observed the transmission like countless citizens across Britain. According to family associates, Princess Catherine remained with her children in the family room, assisting Princess Charlotte with gratitude cards from an earlier school function. William appeared wordlessly. When Catherine glanced up and registered his expression, she understood something had happened. He approached, activated the television, and switched to the ceremony for a detailed replay of Camilla ascending the palace entrance. The lens focused. There it stood, undeniable, the Spencer tiara. Catherine remained mute for an extended pause. Her warmth disappeared. Her bearing shifted. According to a witness present, her fingers shook faintly as she darkened the display. No outburst occurred, no collapse, merely a profound, empty quietness. What stunned observers wasn't simply that Camilla had donned the crown, but that no declaration had preceded it. No justification. No reference in media releases. The choice had seemingly emerged through silent opposition or thoughtless disregard. Regardless, it was a public revelation of something long considered sacred. Several palace experts theorized it represented a strategic maneuver, a method for Camilla to cement her position not merely alongside King Charles, but within the greater narrative of royal legacy. By displaying Diana's most memorable treasure, Camilla was broadcasting. She was no longer marginal. But in acting, she triggered an emotional explosion. Because to the citizens who still grieved Diana, to the sons who forever remembered her, and to Catherine, who protected her spirit as her own, this wasn't simply a crown. It was a boundary that shouldn't have been violated. And now reversal was impossible. A silence louder than scandal. Society anticipated a statement, a clarification, even a brief acknowledgement. But Buckingham Palace stayed mute. As news erupted and royal analysts argued whether this was neglect or calculation, the Queen Consort proceeded as though nothing had transpired. No regret, no reasoning, not even a gentle acknowledgement of the gathering tempest that had captured Britain's focus. It was a dangerous gambit. Through history, the palace had perfected noble quietness, but this stillness seemed calculated. The Spencer tiara wasn't merely another gem in the monarchy's treasury. It wasn't officially crown estate. It was Diana's family's possession. Its emergence on Camilla's brow prompted difficult inquiries. Was the crown loaned, presented, claimed with implicit consent? Nobody understood, and the palace wasn't providing explanations. Privately, the Cambridge residence was allegedly disrupted, while William maintained appointments. Sources describe his demeanor as remote and protective. He didn't react or confront the issue openly, but tension was evident. Catherine, conversely, canceled 2 smaller royal duties at period, referencing domestic priorities, though palace personnel secretly acknowledged she was mentally drained. Officials murmured of disturbance within Kensington Palace. Certain staff, particularly those who'd assisted Diana, were shocked and extremely uneasy. One veteran authority even wondered openly how such a choice had received clearance. Was the king aware? Had Camilla proceeded independently? Or, most troubling, had someone believed the reaction would materialize? Nevertheless, the formal position stayed constant. The palace wouldn't address individual style decisions. But to citizens, this exceeded style. Palace followers observed that the crown's quietness threatened something more profound: ethical separation from the subjects they represented. This wasn't solely about Catherine's emotions now. It concerned heritage, remembrance, and honor. Thousands had matured adoring Diana, and to them, the crown was holy. Even within the royal household, the quietness became uncomfortable. Distant relatives secretly conveyed shock. Per a confidant of the deceased Queen Elizabeth, this wouldn't have occurred during her reign. The monarchy had existed on propriety, and though the establishment had evolved in numerous aspects, certain boundaries were still intended to be respected. The wager was apparent. Through silence, the palace expected the media rotation would evolve and the instance would fade. That social focus would diminish. But conditions were altered this round. Society had transformed. Royal supporters had platforms now. Digital media exploded with movements requiring a statement, while reporters from Diana's period labeled the action insensitive and intensely inflammatory. And during everything, Catherine stayed wordless. She didn't have to speak. The quietness wasn't solely emerging from the palace. It had entered her residence, a subdued grieving of something irreversible. Without language, the atmosphere saturated with soft disillusionment, not fury, not controversy, simply that descending sensation when someone you believed in doesn't defend when it counts. Behind the gates, a future queen grieves. Kensington Palace stands as a citadel in multiple dimensions. Externally, it displays magnificence, protection, and a carefully managed persona. But within the vine-wrapped barriers and ancient paintings, actual individuals exist actual existences, frequently under strain beyond comprehension. And in the period after Camilla's public presentation in Diana's crown, those barriers resonated with an unfamiliar hush, the sort of quietness that isn't regarding tranquility, but regarding sorrow. Associates near the Princess of Wales characterized her state as silently shattered. Not angry, not indignant, simply profoundly injured. This wasn't a governmental controversy or a control struggle. she could handle with tact. It was intimate. It touched a portion of her essence that had forever been linked to Diana, not via genetics, but via understanding, devotion, and duty. Privately, Catherine had consistently considered Diana's heritage as something to be respected delicately. She displayed Diana's sapphire proposal ring each moment of her wedded existence, but had never expected a claim beyond what was presented. She never requested Diana's bridal crown. She never attempted to position herself within Diana's darkness. Rather, she labored relentlessly to construct her personality while still representing the elegance, balance, and sympathy that characterized the deceased princess in society's soul. When the photos emerged, there was no alert, no notification from the palace media department, no dialogue with Camilla, simply a broadcast instant that appeared to revise an implicit agreement. Catherine had invested more than 10 years gaining society's confidence, engaging with missions Diana once supported, and nurturing Diana's descendants with honor. Witnessing something personal, holy, and displayed without permission seemed like a subdued deception. Personnel within the palace observed the shift instantly. The buoyancy in Catherine's movement had disappeared. The typical heat she delivered to dawn meetings was substituted with procedure. She maintained her responsibilities, but behind the scenes, her staff modified her calendar to minimize public visibility. She required room, and for the initial period and extended duration, even her typically peaceful bearing appeared disturbed. William, divided between his allegiance to his parent and his spouse, was described to be similarly affected. Despite being nurtured beneath the burden of palace procedure, he also bears the exposed, permanent sorrow of sacrificing his mother, and observing his spouse grieve, understanding the source was connected to Diana, only intensified the situation more. One night, periods following a Crown episode, Catherine allegedly remained isolated in her personal chamber and accessed an age collection. It held images of Diana, certain formal, certain intimate, transferred from reliable staff and household associates across the decades. She focused on one picture, Diana, beaming in her bridal gown, the Spencer crown gleaming above her crown. No weeping, no rage, simply silent contemplation. That was how Catherine handled sorrow, not by addressing it openly, but by permitting herself to experience it completely within private barriers. And that evening, as she gazed at Diana's portrait, one inquiry remained in her soul. Was a heritage she had promised to defend dissolving away before her vision? The ones who knew her couldn't stay silent. The quietness from the palace might have been calculated, but the quietness beyond it didn't persist extended. Inside periods of Camilla's emergence in Diana's crown, speakers from Diana's history started to emerge, gentle initially, then impossible to ignore. Previous staff, near companions, and extended associates who had selected to stay silent for decades abruptly discovered themselves incapable to dismiss what had occurred. For them, it wasn't regarding palace style or procedure. It was regarding allegiance. Among the initial to communicate was Lady Sarah McCorkadale, Diana's sibling, who allegedly conveyed personal anxiety that the Spencer crown had been utilized without engaging the household. Despite avoiding creating a formal declaration, her unease emerged recognized via reliable channels. Others were less controlled. Jemima Khan, an extended companion of Diana and someone who had observed directly the psychological burden of her union, communicated to a British reporter unofficially declaring, there existed particular objects Diana considered holy. That crown was not simply an ornament. It was intimate. To witness it on Camilla, of all individuals, seemed incorrect. Her statements, despite informal, resonated strongly throughout digital platforms and media channels. Previous palace photographer Ken Gavin, who had tracked Diana for decades, participated in a broadcast discussion, noticeably disturbed. I positioned 10 yards from Diana on her matrimonial moment. I recall the manner she caressed that crown as she entered the coach. It was hers, not simply in title, but in significance. Witnessing it presently, on someone she never believed, someone who injured her, was like observing legacy revised. These declarations weren't intended to provoke controversy. They emerged from a position of memorial, of defense over someone who no more possessed a speaker. And though they didn't all emerge from formal positions or palace endorsement, they held influence. These were the individuals who had positioned alongside Diana in her most vulnerable instances, and presently, they positioned for her once more. Even organizations once connected with Diana released understated comments. A youth sanctuary she had frequented regularly shared an aged image of Diana, displaying the crown, titled solely with, "Forever recalled, eternally honored." To numerous, it seemed like a subdued gesture of unity with Catherine. Social opinion pursued, response areas saturated with communications supporting Catherine's elegance, commending her quietness, and challenging the palace's management of the circumstance. Images spread displaying parallel photos of Diana and Camilla in the crown, with titles that didn't require clarification. The citizens had selected a position. During everything, Catherine stayed quiet. She provided no discussions, created no declarations, and maintained her responsibilities with subdued expertise. But the statements of Diana's companions had accomplished something significant. They moved the story from controversy to heritage, from rumor to memorial. Social recollection returned to Diana with complete strength for the initial period since Camilla emerged queen consort. The tiara might shift crowns, but unwavering allegiance stays established in the souls of those who recall. And presently, they were voicing up for Diana, and the lady attempting so desperately to defend what she abandoned. When legacy was reduced to ornament, when Queen Camilla ultimately communicated, it wasn't via media statement. It emerged throughout a confidential discussion with a reliable reporter from one of Britain's most recognized publications. The piece was intended to showcase her initial period as queen consort, but partially through. The dialogue shifted directly toward the dispute regarding the Spencer crown. Questioned explicitly about the choice to display Diana's matrimonial crown, Camilla didn't hesitate. "It's a tiara," she declared simply, "not a memento. The establishment is a functioning organization, and these articles are intended to be displayed. They're not suspended in history." Those statements arrived with a harsh impact throughout the United Kingdom. For certain, they appeared sensible. For numerous others, especially those who still carry Diana near in recollection, they seemed like a rejection, a diminishment of something deeply passionate into something practical. Camilla explained how a group of designers and palace academics created her clothing and ornament selections, suggesting that the crown's choice was element of a broader ritual concept. She declared there was no purpose to generate distress, and that crowns circulate, simply like any additional palace ornament. But the injury, as numerous perceived it, had previously been inflicted. It wasn't simply what she declared, but how she declared it. Calculated, detached, completely absent of passionate understanding. For Catherine and others who perceived Diana's recollection as something to be managed with holy attention, Camilla's statements seemed like a barrier being closed on years of passionate reality. The piece tried to moderate the mood by emphasizing Camilla's humanitarian activities, increasing social approval, and balancing position alongside King Charles. But no quantity of favorable media could shift attention from that single statement. "It's a tiara, not a memento," circulated on digital platforms for periods, echoed with shock, rage, and mockery. Within the palace barriers, responses were divided. Certain senior staff allegedly believed the discussion had been an error, reviving an injury that had scarcely started to mend. Others silently concurred with Camilla's opinion, despite they would never declare it openly. The establishment is regarding progression, they claimed, not emotion. But Catherine's quietness persisted. She did not interact with the discussion and created no declarations. Her following social emergence was at a youth medical center in Manchester, where she beamed, heard, and consoled without ever referencing the crown or the news. Still, even there, reporters observed her lack of gleam, no jewelry, pin, or gems. Simply a soft azure jacket outfit and an appearance that declared beyond any tiara ever might. Camilla might have attempted to conclude the dialogue, but rather she rekindled it, because for the society and Catherine, This wasn't simply regarding who displayed what. It was regarding who recalled what, and who selected not to, and in selecting to reject the history. Camilla might have discovered herself more separated than previously. William trapped between obligation and love. For Prince William, the dispute regarding Diana's crown was not simply a social matter, but a deeply intimate calculation. Nobody in the palace bore as much passionate legacy with that ornament as he did. He had observed his mother display it with dignity, extensive before he comprehended the strain she suffered within the palace barriers. And presently he had observed his spouse's expression collapse when it emerged without alert, positioned on the crown of the lady his mother once dreaded most. Sources near the Prince of Wales characterize him as noticeably divided. Within private barriers, William was troubled, not solely for Catherine, but also for the representative communication the deed had transmitted. He had extensively attempted to manage palace obligation with passionate reality, and this instant pushed those two realms into immediate impact. He couldn't openly condemn his stepmother, but neither could he dismiss the quiet suffering in his residence. Those nearest to him declare William walked for periods throughout the ceremony. He contacted his confidential assistant numerous occasions, questioning if any previous endorsements had been reviewed. The response was unclear. There was no transparent clarification. There was no advance notice. It was a silent agreement throughout the sequence of palace choices that permitted the crown to be displayed, as though it were simply another gleaming treasure. And still William understood superior. He understood how diligently Catherine had labored to defend Diana's portrait. He recalled the evenings they discussed about his mother, the recollections he attempted to maintain, the narratives he distributed with George and Charlotte. He had selected to present Catherine Diana's proposal band not simply as a passionate motion, but as a representative connection between history and current. In numerous aspects, the crown had been the ultimate pristine article until presently. The burden of this was beyond passionate. It was governmental. As the upcoming monarch, William had to evaluate the social effect of each statement he delivered. Each quietness he maintained. Voicing out would threaten injuring the delicate harmony inside the palace household. But remaining quiet seemed like deleting a portion of his mother's heritage. It was a situation no child should ever have to inhabit, between his history and current, between the lady who nurtured him and the lady who assisted him nurture his offspring. For periods, William maintained his separation from Clarence House. When he did communicate to King Charles, the dialogue was allegedly strained but dignified. He did not create charges, but he questioned inquiries. Why was Catherine not notified? Why was something so filled with legacy handled like an routine ornament? There were no fulfilling responses. In society, William preserved his balance. But throughout a Memorial Day occasion a period afterward, as he positioned alongside Catherine in serious quietness, palace watchers observed his firm yet profound look, as though a portion of him was elsewhere, possibly with Diana, possibly questioning how matters had proceeded so incorrect. In that instant, he wasn't simply the successor to the monarchy. He was a child positioning between two ladies who had never encountered, both bearing fragments of his soul, the tribute that needed no words. In palace spheres, quietness frequently communicates stronger than any declaration, and the globe was observing when Princess Catherine emerged for her following prominent emergence. It wasn't a premier occasion. It wasn't a ceremony. It was a memorial ritual, one of the most serious appointments on the palace schedule. She came silently, clothed in a fitted ebony jacket and plain ebony mittens, her bearing refined, her expression balanced. But it was what she displayed on her left arm that declared all. Not a crown, not a palace ribbon. Simply a fragile golden band, Diana's band. It had previously been a preference of the deceased princess, displayed throughout softer appointments, instances that signify beyond any social exhibition. A present from her parent. It represented power and endurance in periods of intimate grief. And presently, years afterward, it rested on Catherine's arm as her sole ornament, a solitary, quiet communication. Diana was recalled, not via display, but via soul. Watchers observed instantly. digital platforms illuminated inside seconds. She didn't acquire the crown, one message stated. She displayed her sorrow elegantly. Palace analysts commended the selection as profoundly deliberate. Previous palace staff verified that Catherine had silently asked to display the band simply periods following the crown episode. It had been delivered from Althorpe, Diana's household property, with a written message from the Spencers. She would be dignified. That band emerged the focus of each image. Not the jacket, not the footwear. Simply that solitary strand of golden encircled around an arm that had softly carried Diana's descendants, composed appreciation messages to mourning households, and presently bore the burden of a quiet objection. She declared nothing in the discussions. She created no understated attacks. But the complete country comprehended when she placed a memorial at the base of the monument that period. Catherine was not concerned in retrieving the crown. She was retrieving the recollection. Even the king was allegedly affected. He observed his daughter-in-law from the stairs of the cenotaph, observing her modest, intentional memorial. Palace references declare the motion encouraged silent consideration among veteran staff, certain of whom had misjudged the passionate importance of Diana's heritage inside the recent era of nobles. Camilla did not participate that specific ritual. She had selected for a distinct appointment in Scotland that identical period. Whether the calendar was calculated or accidental stays uncertain. But numerous observed the difference. While one queen displayed gems periods previous, another upcoming queen displayed a heritage. For Catherine, this was never regarding style. It was regarding conservation. The recollection of a lady who created a route with suffering and elegance. The band was her method of declaring, I haven't dismissed, and I never shall. In a realm where social personalities frequently communicate excessively, Catherine had perfected the skill of declaring beyond by declaring nothing. And in that quiet memorial, she reminded the United Kingdom and the establishment itself that certain objects cannot be loaned. They must be respected. And respect, as Diana previously demonstrated us, doesn't constantly gleam. Occasionally it merely radiates. In the core of an establishment constructed on custom, it was a silent deed with the strongest significance. Princess Catherine never competed for the limelight. She protected a recollection. While crowns might transfer from crown to crown, heritage exists in our selections when nobody requires them. In selecting honor over revenge, Catherine established she doesn't acquire a tiara to respect Diana, simply elegance, control, and memorial. As the globe persists to observe the palace household transform, one matter is certain. The struggle for heritage isn't achieved with gems, but with the silent power of those who recall. What do you think about this story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you,